Look at these pictures of Spider-Man. This is a fully completed, data-mined model of a would-be Spider Cop suit that was found in the PC files of Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered. But it was never released. So today, on the 6th anniversary of Marvel's Spider-Man, undoubtedly my favorite game of all time, I thought, like many others, maybe I'd make a retrospective video on why I think it's still the best in the series 2 sequels later, but then when I started my replay, Spider Cop became very hard to ignore. So, let's take a look into the mysterious disappearance of the running gag that never returned and the controversy around it. Kicking off a new series where we'll be taking a look at how police are portrayed in video games from the perspective of someone who portrays police on TV. With great power comes qualified immunity. Let's look back on Spider Cop. When Insomniac's take on Spider-Man hit the PlayStation 4, it was widely celebrated with critical and commercial acclaim, selling close to 9 million units only a few months after launch. However, the game found itself in some unexpected controversy. Not the puddles. It became heavily criticized for its suspected pro-police messaging, even being labeled as copaganda. But what is copaganda?
Well, copaganda is basically the way that mass incarceration, policing the criminal system, this idea that the police, the system is about justice, the prosecutors are all the good guys, and other people that find themselves in the system are bad. It's in everything, but it's also in other things, little things that people don't even think of. It's in the Powerpuff Girls, it's in Darkwing Duck, it's in all these little and that's the way. To me, those are more concerning than Law and Order, at least to some degree. Once I've told you what propaganda is, you think, okay, Law and Order, those things qualify, but you're not going to think about it ooh, Darkwing Duck, why is Bushwick the villain,
Now, for what it's worth, I thought Spider Cop was a really funny bit. I love Gary Lowenthal's Spider-Man. This was a joke that was just improvised in the booth, and it worked so well they kept it in. Hell, when the game came out, all I remember was Spider Cop. Insomniac and the reviewers used Spider Cop as a showcase of the game's humor and witty writing. So, why all the cop-fuffle about a pro-police message? Well, it's one thing when you make a cute little joke like this.
Are you narrating yourself?
What? No, of course not. The chief never did understand Spider Cop. Thought he was a loose cannon.
Already regretting this.
But when you put that bit in the context of what characters say in scenes like the one I'm about to show you, it becomes a lot harder to separate the humor from the clear pro-police bias on display.
Fair enough. So, why'd you call? Need a date to the policeman's ball?
You got a black and white suit? No ball this year anyway. We spent too much integrating Oscorp's surveillance tech.
Worth it though, right?
It was. Until an hour ago. The system went down. Citywide. Every tower.
How?
They tell me someone sabotaged the central server, and now all the towers are offline.
Inside job?
Maybe. I'll figure it out later. Right now, we need to get the towers back online. Fast.
And you called me? Aw, that's sweet.
I called someone I could trust. Plus, the signals are scrambled and we have no idea how to fix it.
Ooh. I love a challenge.
You break it, you buy it.
I thought you trusted me.
This scene was the one that made my eyebrows raise and eventually led me down the Spider Cop rabbit hole, because if you know anything about police, let alone the NYPD, you would know they got money. Here's the actual budget of the NYPD for reference. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. The story of Spider Cop begins with a mission called Keeping the Peace. It starts when Spidey gets a call from Officer Yuri Watanabe, his person on the force. She asks him to go around to each police precinct and reboot the Oscorp surveillance towers. That's when Pete makes a joke that he's a stereotypical too old for this shit cop that desperately needs to retire. So let's separate the video game context of this mission and break it down by the facts that it's presenting. You are playing as a vigilante, working outside of the law, collaborating with a defunded NYPD to restore a privatized surveillance network to spy on unknowing New York civilians. Now, there's obviously a bunch of laws being broken in this quest that's meant to encourage the players to explore the map, but even if you're just a Marvel fan, you know that since day one, the Marvel Universe has historically served as an allegory of our real world. But somehow in Universe 1048, there has been a very progressive policy put in place to simultaneously cap the budget of the police and also fund a privatized surveillance network. A network put in place by a company we have only ever known as the main hub for all of Spider-Man's baddies, not them. Now, a common component of copaganda is portraying police as underdogs who need to bend the rules of the law for the greater good, from purposely avoiding warrants to commandeering civilian vehicles. This scene does a lot of things that are clearly unethical, and it left me dumbfounded during my replay. As someone who has always praised the writing and characterization of Spider-Man in this game, it shows such a lack of understanding of real-world policing, policy, and public opinion. We would assume Spider-Man might say, "Hey Yuri, maybe we shouldn't spy on New Yorkers even if they're criminals." Because this does sound a lot like the plot of The Winter Soldier, but instead he says, "Alright Yuri," not that Yuri, his wife, "don't mind if I do tap into this private security network made by the dude who sets the events of this game in motion." But what makes this scene more egregious is that it's not taking into account a major event that happened like 10 minutes ago. During the game's tutorial, Spider-Man is assisting police in a raid on Fisk Tower. Right before he gets to Big Willie, he gets ambushed by a whole-ass bomb squad. But instead of Spidey processing the fact he just survived a police ambush at the request of the wealthy, the hero who has always been known for his intelligence and humanity takes a collective groan with Yuri over a few bad apples.
Hey Yuri, looks like some of your guys were on Fisk's payroll. Good news is, they were Willie's last line of defense. I'm right outside his office.
Take him down, now.
The game says, don't think about it. We're a video game. I'm sorry, but if the few bad apples are a militarized SWAT team, I think that should raise some questions at the very least. It literally doesn't make them any different from the fist thugs you fight throughout the game. They even use the same character models. The parallels are right there. Our spider senses should be tingling. But by the way Pete just brushes this off, it prompts the question, has Spider-Man dealt with corrupt cops before? And if that's the case, he seems fine with it. My guy, you gotta do something. How can you be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man if the guys who are supposed to serve and protect the neighborhood are only listening to the villain who traditionally has been gentrifying and destabilizing it? It's clear that Insomniac wanted to take a safe, mainstream, liberal approach to the topic of policing. Play it safe and keep the status quo of who Spider-Man has always been. But that idea becomes rocky when Marvel introduces characters like Miles Morales, a character who provides social commentary by just existing. A black Spider-Man, not that one. Now, let's talk about the course correction, dare I say aversion, Insomniac took to Spider-Cop and police in general in the follow-up title. The completed Spider-Cop suit seems like it was pulled from release at the last minute. Most likely, it was supposed to be included in the remastered version of the 2018 title, which was released alongside the PlayStation 5 and the Miles Morales game in the fall of 2020. The murder of George Floyd, committed by the Minnesota Police Department, sparked mainstream global outrage towards law enforcement's historically violent and discriminatory police practices. The outrage got so bad, you had brands trying to position things like Nike as the only anti-racist shoe you should wear. So to say the climate was sensitive for the release of the Miles Morales game is an understatement. In retrospect, playing through Miles' game is such a jarring pivot after the first one. 2018 carried its pro-police sentiment all the way to its final DLC chapter, where Yuri decides to become a vigilante above the law because the ideals of being a cop in New York are so pure and honorable she's held back by its restrictive code. I mean, that didn't stop these guys. I can't say for certain, but aspects of this game feel reactionary, like they cut out content during the last leg of development, which would make sense for a game releasing in the same year as these monumental protests happening. Play it safe and sell PlayStations. Insomniac went from Peter going to every police precinct in the city to Miles not going to any, let alone have any kind of interaction with police. A character whose father in this series and in other mediums has traditionally been a cop. Miles as a character has been used to break so much ground. He's become a whole generation Spider-Man. So I find it cowardly and disappointing when writers veer away from the identity politics that inherently come with an Afro-Latino Spider-Man. That includes the films. Miles' story is begging to have someone with lived experience go in there and reignite commentary on what it means to be a Spider-Man for the community. Spider-Man is already seen as a menace by mainstream media. Miles is Afro-Latino, his dad is a cop. Villains like Fisk are constantly using the police to destabilize the communities where our heroes are from. And regardless if characters like Jefferson Davis, Yuri, or in Batman's case, Jim Gordon always choose to do the right thing, their complacency in allowing bad, corrupt policing to happen makes them just as bad as the bad apples. It's right there, and it bothers me so much that writers cowered away from this kind of subject matter, especially when it comes to heroes who undoubtedly would try to stop these real-world atrocities from happening. Peter would give Derek Chauvin the same treatment as Norman. Full force, no holding back punch. Obviously, it's wishful thinking to hope that Disney would address these systemic issues head on, but I'm happy we have Andor. I don't know if you know this, but some people only watch Marvel movies, or play Marvel games, or eat Marvel food. So when Marvel and Insomniac take the "there's only a few bad apples" approach to systemic issues while using the most popular hero in the world, it actively affects the media literacy of its audience. It conditions the audience to expect this messaging as ideals of the character. But when valid criticism over copaganda is drowned out by outrage over Puddles and Peter's new face, we lose focus on the real-world implications messaging like this can cause. 4 years since Miles' game and 6 years since the original, we've seen an increase in police funding and militarization here in the US, paired with a narrative of immigrant crime panic, which the data proves this talking point is greatly fabricated, not to mention extremely xenophobic. I'm not saying that Insomniac contributed to this, but when you don't actively try to address these mistakes head-on in your follow-up titles, and instead choose to pivot towards a performative pandering message at the height of it being displayed worldwide, you show that you lack understanding of the actual issues at play. And in turn, that complacency affects the quality of your game. With great power, there must also come great responsibility. Watch a movie, play a game, be kind. If you mod Spider Cop into your game, you're a cop.